Hey guys, it's Matt. I wanted to do a quick video about a current event that has kind of captured the nation's attention, and rightfully so. So unless you've been living under a rock for the past couple days, you know that an African-American man named George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis Police Department in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And yes, that's right, I said murdered, 100%, because that's what I believe it is. So in a nutshell, law enforcement was called to respond to a situation where a man was accused of trying to obtain items with fraudulent documents, I believe it was. The man went outside the business, they called the police, he was in his car, the police came, they got him out of the vehicle, put him in cuffs, walk him across the street, put him on the ground on his stomach with handcuffs still on. And this is all on video surveillance footage. You can go watch it. TMZ just uploaded some this morning, some additional footage. They threw him on the ground in handcuffs on his stomach, and a police officer knelt on Mr. Floyd's neck for 7 minutes. And then Mr. Floyd died. That's exactly what happened. Now, the officer who's kneeling on him, he appeared to have his hands in his pockets. Some people were saying he had gloves on, as kind of trying to justify it, saying that he needed his hands free because a small crowd was starting to gather, and they were rightfully questioning the law enforcement response to this situation. That doesn't hold water, because here's the most egregious part of it. It wasn't just one cop killing one guy. It wasn't just that one bad apple you always hear about. There were 4 other cops standing around. And yeah, some of them were engaging the bystanders, but for the most part, they were standing around and they watched while one of their brothers in blue murdered an unarmed citizen. 100%. You know, as bad as the officer's actions were that resulted in Mr. Floyd losing his life, it's just as egregious and, quite frankly, even more so disgusting to me that those 4 stood by and let that happen. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that, period, but certainly not in 2020 America. You know, law enforcement apologist, and I'm a cop. I think if you watch my videos, you know that. I've been a police officer for 12 years. I've been a supervisor roughly half that time. And I've been patrol my whole career. I'm no fancy investigator. I am a beat cop. I'm a cop's cop. I've always worked patrol. I've worked night shift probably 95% of my career, 90% of my career. I'm a cop, right? I stand up for good cops. But I've always said, and a lot of people have always said, you know, there's nothing that good cops hate more than bad cops. And, you know, there are bad cops, right? We all admit that. We all see the evidence of that. But they don't represent the whole. They don't represent the totality of law enforcement. There's a few bad apples in law enforcement, just like there are in every profession. And guess what? This situation in Minneapolis, that refutes every single one of those arguments. Where were the good cops that stopped that one bad cop from killing Mr. Floyd? They were standing right there. Those are not good cops. If you cannot do this job and hold yourself and others accountable, you have no business wearing a badge. I don't want you on my side. You're a criminal. You are a scumbag. You are not on my team. You know, if you can't do this job and separate emotion from it, if you can't avoid being triggered to the point where you violate someone's civil liberties to the point of taking their life, you don't need to be doing this job. If you can't go from 100 miles an hour to 0 when a pursuit ends and you put the cuffs on someone, or you get done fighting some big old dude and you finally get cuffs on him, if you can't emotionally disengage and go from 100 to 0 instantly so you don't violate that person's rights, you don't have any business doing this job. Because law enforcement has a very narrow role, right? Regardless what Hollywood makes you think, we have a very limited, narrow role in the grand scheme of the legal system, of the justice system. Our job is to establish probable cause, conduct investigations, make arrests as needed. That's it. And then testify in court. We are supposed to arrest a person. Once they're in our custody, we have responsibility for them. We have to keep them safe. We safely take them to jail. At that point, they enter into the judicial process. You know, citizens have the right to a trial, a right to a speedy trial, in fact. They have the right to confront their accuser. They have a right to review any evidence that's going to be presented against them. They have the right to have their case judged and arbitrated by a jury of their peers or a judge if they so choose. These are rights that are afforded to them. And guess what? In this situation, that officer not only took Mr. Floyd's rights, he took his life, he denied his constitutional rights in the process. That officer played judge, jury, and executioner for whatever reason, and his buddies stood there and watched. It's absolutely disgusting. And if that's the state of law enforcement today, and I'm not saying it is everywhere, I've not seen anything like that where I work. If that's the state of law enforcement as a nation, we're screwed, guys. We have problems. You have to have the personal courage, the integrity, and the fortitude to stand up in the face of wrongdoing, to stand up to a bad cop. If you see a bad cop, and you are a cop, even if you're not a cop, if you see police misconduct, you have a moral obligation as a citizen to stop it. And it's uncomfortable when you're wearing the badge. I've been in that situation. I've been in a situation where I had an officer who was escalating because that person that he was dealing with said the right combination of things to get inside his head, and he let himself go there. He let himself be emotionally manipulated, and he was escalating the situation. I saw it was not going well. I pulled him off that scene. I made him go sit in his car, and we had a nice long talk after that. And you know what? It didn't happen again. He was a brand new cop right out of the academy. That was uncomfortable. I've had those conversations before I was a supervisor just with other cops. And you know what? I've had it happen to me. I had a situation where I was responding to a call that had a lot of similarities to something I was dealing with in my personal life, something that was incredibly traumatic. And quite frankly, I probably should have taken a little bit of time off work. One of my officers, and this is the importance of knowing your coworkers, knowing your fellow officers, trusting your fellow officers. She recognized it immediately. I was her supervisor. I was her sergeant. We were in the middle of this call, and she just glanced at me. I didn't say anything. I was hanging back. I was just observing. She walked over to me and she said, "Hey, Sarge, why don't you go in service? We'll meet up after this." I was so grateful because I was too stubborn to do it. I was too stubborn to separate myself from a situation. Probably wouldn't have ended bad. It wasn't a confrontational situation, but who knows? She knew me well enough. She knew my body language. She recognized me, and she had the courage to go to her supervisor and tell me to leave the scene, and I left. That's what it takes, guys. And if you can't do that, you have no business wearing this badge. And I'm going to leave you with this. It seems like a lot of people are saying that this wasn't racially related, that race had nothing to do with it. I'm just going to say one thing in rebuttal to that. So Mr. Floyd was a middle-aged African-American man wearing a wife beater and black sweatpants, and they sat on his neck for 7 minutes until he died. Do you think they would, in broad daylight, on a busy street corner with people walking around filming, do you think they would have done the same thing if that was a middle-aged white guy wearing a suit or khakis and a polo? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I'm not going to get too far into that, but we can't ignore that. We can't ignore that side of it. So that's pretty much it. That's all I got. This is just an appeal to my fellow brothers in blue, my fellow law enforcement officers. If you're going to do this job, do it the right way. Protect the civil rights of all citizens, not just ones that look like you or are of your demographic or of your political persuasion. Everyone's rights. Rights are absolute, guys. They do not pick and choose certain demographics to protect. We all have the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your political persuasion is. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your religion is. We all have those rights. And if you can't unequivocally protect those rights for all citizens, you don't need to be a cop. You need to find another line of work. Go flip burgers. There's other jobs out there. This one is not for you, and I'm not going to work with you. So that's pretty much it, guys. Hey, thanks for watching. Pay attention to this situation and be a watchdog in your own community, and maybe we can prevent this from happening again. All right, thanks. Have a great day.